You're in a room full of people who matter to you. You have something worth saying. Something true. Something that needs to be heard. But the moment you open your mouth, you feel it, the shift. Eyes that were on you drift away. The energy drops. Someone checks their phone. Not because your idea was bad. Because the words you chose told them you didn't believe it yourself. There's a moment that separates those who command attention from those who beg for it. It happens in the first 5 seconds of speaking. And most people lose it before they finish their first sentence. The Stoics understood this 2,000 years ago. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. They knew that strength isn't performed through impressive words or loud voices. It's revealed by what you refuse to say. 6 phrases. That's all it takes to destroy your credibility. 6 phrases people use every day, thinking they sound humble, polite, reasonable. But what they actually do is give everyone in the room permission to ignore you. And once that permission is granted, clawing your way back to being taken seriously is almost impossible. So here's the paradox the Stoics lived by. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is shut up about your own uncertainty. Let me show you exactly what's been making you dismissible. You wake up every morning with thoughts that matter. Ideas that could change things. Perspectives that deserve consideration. But somewhere between your mind and your mouth, something breaks. We live in a world that won't stop talking. Everyone fighting to be heard. To matter. To prove they're worth listening to. But here's what no one tells you. It's not about being heard. It's about how you speak that determines if anyone listens at all. So you hedge. You apologize. You wrap every single thought in layers of maybe, probably, perhaps, I think, I feel. Not because you're uncertain, but because you're terrified of one thing. Being wrong in front of other people. So you do something worse than staying silent. You shrink yourself first. Before anyone else gets the chance. You disclaim your own value before they can question it. You apologize for taking up space before anyone asks you to leave. You perform smallness so convincingly that people believe it's who you actually are. And then you wonder why they walk right over you. Marcus Aurelius wrote this in the middle of a war. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Clean. Absolute. No room for performance. But what about when you know it's true and you still sabotage yourself with the words you choose? What about when your conviction dies in your throat because you dressed it in apology? What about when you're right and no one hears it because you sounded like you were guessing? If you've ever spoken up and been completely ignored, not because you were wrong, but because you sounded unsure, then you need to understand what comes next. Because I'm about to show you the exact phrases that have been killing your presence. And once you see them, you can't unhear them. Not in yourself. Not in others. Subscribe, because this isn't motivation. This is surgery. The year is 170 AD. Marcus Aurelius sits alone in a military tent on the frozen Danube frontier. The most powerful man in the world. Emperor of Rome. Commander of legions stretching from Britain to the deserts of Africa. And his writing in the dark. Not proclamations. Not speeches. Not laws that will outlive him. Just thoughts. For himself. He writes this: waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Not think about being one. Not try to be one. Not hope someone notices you're attempting to be one. Be one. 4 words. No qualifiers. No disclaimers. No asking permission to exist with conviction. Because Marcus understood something we've completely forgotten. Language doesn't just describe reality. It creates it. The words you use don't reflect your confidence. They build it. Or they burn it down before anyone hears what you actually meant to say. 50 years before Marcus, another man understood this even better. Epictetus. Born a slave. Crippled. Owned. Beaten. Property. But he became one of history's greatest teachers. Not because he had power. Because he understood where power actually lives. He told his students, first learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak. Not speak carefully. Not speak politely. Not speak in a way that protects you from criticism. Speak with knowledge of what you mean. Because when you actually know what you mean, something shifts. You don't hedge. You don't apologize. You don't perform uncertainty to buy protection from judgment. You just say it. And people feel the difference immediately. So let's go through them. The 6 phrases that are killing you. The ones you've been using your entire life thinking they make you sound reasonable. They don't. They make you sound like you're apologizing for breathing. Not all at once. One at a time. With the weight they deserve. Phrase 1. I think and I feel. You use them every single day, dozens of times. And every time you do, you're handing people a permission slip to ignore you. These aren't statements. They're escape hatches. Listen to the difference. I think we should move forward with this approach. Versus. We should move forward with this approach. Same idea. Same person. Same room. But one sounds like a suggestion you're testing out. The other sounds like a conclusion you've reached. Here's what people hear when you start with I think. They hear, this is just my opinion. It's subjective. It's negotiable. You can dismiss it without consequence. And they do. But here's the thing. You've already thought. You've already felt. That's why you're speaking in the first place. So why are you narrating your internal process instead of delivering your conclusion? Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." The same thing happens here. We fear judgment more than we trust our own reasoning. So we wrap every statement in soft language. We cushion it. We make it optional. I feel like this might work. I think maybe we could consider. You're not being humble. You're being forgettable. The shift is simple. State what you concluded, not how you got there. We should prioritize this because the timeline demands it. This approach works better based on what we've seen. Here's what makes sense given the constraints. Same thought. Completely different authority. Stop asking permission to think. You've already done it. Phrase 2. This might be a dumb question, but the moment those words leave your mouth, you've told everyone in the room that your curiosity doesn't deserve respect. So why should they give it any? You just called yourself dumb. Preemptively. Before anyone else had the chance. And now they believe you. Socrates spent his entire life asking questions. He built an empire of thought on inquiry. He exposed contradictions in the most powerful men of Athens. And he never once apologized for wondering. He didn't start with "this might be foolish to ask." He didn't hedge. He didn't perform ignorance as a shield. He owned his inquiry. Because the Stoics understood something crucial. Ignorance isn't shameful. Pretending you know when you don't, that's shameful. So ask. Deeply. Directly. Help me understand why we're approaching it this way. Walk me through the reasoning here. What happens if we reverse the sequence? Or just ask the question. No apology. No self-deprecation. No disclaimer. Questions are how we learn. How we expose flaws. How we find truth. Don't poison yours before you've even asked them. Phrase 3. Sorry to bother you, but you've just announced to another human being that your needs are negotiable. That you don't deserve their attention. That your existence is an inconvenience. And the moment you say it, they agree with you. Listen to what happens. Sorry to bother you, but could you possibly look at this when you get a chance? Versus. I need this by Thursday. One is begging. The other is communicating. Epictetus taught his students about axios. Worthiness. Not arrogance. Not entitlement. Not demanding things you haven't earned. But the quiet, unshakable knowledge that you have a right to exist and make reasonable requests. When you apologize for needing something legitimate, you're not being polite. You're teaching people to deprioritize you. You're training them to see you as optional. Because here's the truth. Politeness isn't apologizing for existing. Politeness is respecting someone's time while still valuing your own. I need this by Thursday. Quick question. Following up on what we discussed. You're not demanding. You're not rude. You're just not apologizing for being human. If this is starting to reveal how you've been shrinking yourself in plain sight, you need to hear the rest of this. Subscribe. Because the Stoics didn't teach performance. They taught presence. And presence doesn't apologize for taking up space. Phrase 4. I'm no expert, but why are you speaking then? I know that sounds brutal. But that's exactly what everyone in the room hears. You just disclaimed your own credibility before you made your point. You told them, don't hold me accountable for this. I don't even believe it myself. So they don't. Marcus Aurelius spent hours alone questioning everything. His thoughts. His motives. His judgments. Am I being fair? Am I seeing clearly? Am I letting ego speak instead of truth? But when he spoke publicly, he spoke with clarity. He didn't open every statement with disclaimers about his limitations. He didn't perform false humility to protect himself from criticism. Because self-doubt belongs in private. Clarity belongs in public. The shift is this. Speak from what you actually know. In my experience, this approach produces better results. What I've observed over the last 6 months is a pattern. The data suggests we're looking at this wrong. Or just state it. No preamble. No disclaimer. If you're genuinely uncertain, do the work first. Research. Learn. Then speak. But don't dilute what you do know by announcing what you don't. Phrase 5. Does that make sense? You just finished explaining something. You laid out your reasoning. You made your point. And then you ask them to validate whether your thinking is coherent. That's not checking for understanding. That's seeking approval for having spoken. Listen to what happens after those 4 words. The energy in the room shifts. Because you just introduced doubt about whether you even know what you're talking about. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Know what you mean. Say it clearly. Then stop. Just stop. Because silence after a statement is confidence. It says, I've said what needed to be said. If you need more, ask. But does that make sense? Says, I'm not sure I made sense. Please tell me I'm allowed to have thought this. The shift is simple. What questions do you have? What needs clarification? Or nothing. Just let the silence sit there. Let them come to you if they need more. You're not questioning whether you made sense. You're inviting engagement. That's the difference between weakness and strength. Phrase 6. You're probably right, but you just conceded the argument before you made it. You told them, I'm about to disagree with you, but I don't even believe my disagreement is worth considering. So why are you speaking? The Stoics disagreed when they had reason to. Cato stood in the Roman Senate and opposed Caesar when everyone else was silent. He didn't start with you're probably right about needing more power, but he stated his position. Clearly. Without apology. Because weak disagreement is worse than agreement. It wastes everyone's time with objections even you don't believe in. If you're going to disagree, own it. I see it differently. Here's why. I have concerns about that approach. The timeline you're proposing creates problems we haven't addressed. Or stay silent. But don't perform disagreement you've already surrendered. So let's return to where we started. That moment. The one where everything is decided. You're in a room. You have something worth saying. And you open your mouth. But this time, something's different. You thought it was about what you said. The idea. The argument. The facts. But it was never about that. It was always about what you didn't say. The hedging. The apologizing. The disclaiming. The validation seeking. Every single time you used those 6 phrases, you handed people a reason to dismiss you. Not because you were wrong. Not because your idea lacked merit. Because you sounded like you didn't believe you deserved to be right. Marcus Aurelius wrote this, very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. The same is true for respect. For authority. For presence. You don't need a louder voice. You don't need to be more aggressive. You don't need to fake confidence you don't feel. You just need to stop the quiet self-sabotage you didn't even know you were committing. When you eliminate these 6 phrases, you're not adding anything new. You're not becoming someone else. You're revealing what was always there. Your clarity. Your conviction. Your right to take up space without apology. Because the Stoics didn't teach tricks. They didn't teach manipulation or performance or how to sound impressive. They taught integrity. Alignment between what you know and how you speak it. Between what you believe and what comes out of your mouth. That's all this is. Epictetus once said something that gets misunderstood constantly. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. People hear that and think it means shrink yourself. Apologize. Make yourself small so no one judges you. But that's not what he meant. Here's what he didn't say. Be content to call yourself foolish and stupid. There's a difference. A canyon of difference. Between humility and self-erasure. Between being open to correction and preemptively surrendering your value. The Stoics knew it. They lived it. And now you know it too. You don't need to perform strength. You don't need to become someone louder or bolder or more aggressive than you are. You just need to stop performing weakness. Say what you mean. Own your thinking. Stop apologizing for taking up the space you were always meant to occupy. And watch what happens. The room will shift. Not because you suddenly became different. Not because you transformed into someone else. But because you finally stopped hiding. The Stoics didn't speak to be admired. They didn't write to impress future generations. They spoke so we could live wiser, subscribe, and walk the Stoic way.